So, good morning, Tom.
Morning, Andrew. Morning. You are so bright and alive first thing in the morning.
Well, I have an hour's advantage because I'm in Spain. We're an hour ahead of you. Plus the fact that I tend to wake up at 5 o'clock. So for this, it's like midday for me. Anyway, um, yesterday in your fascinating piece about bullying, you mentioned power, and I just thought we could tease out some of the aspects of power a little bit today. So tell us a little bit about how power comes into our lives, what kind of forms it takes, which could be early on in life, and then how to handle it responsibly.
Yes, if you're appointed to be the captain of a sports team, even at a very young age, you have a responsibility. I mean, that's what captain means, and it means that you've got to you have responsibility. You can sort of perhaps move the players around and that, and I think that it gives you power, and the way that we respond to that can be, like so many things we talk about on a continuum. And I think we see so many examples in life where people are given a position of power, or indeed they take it, and then they exercise it to the detriment and the damage of people around them. And so I think when we're looking at organizations of any sort, I'm fascinated by how power flows through. In lots of organizations, you have the people at the top, we call them the C-suite, and you've got the people sort of down at the bottom, if I can sort of describe that hierarchy. And very often the people at the bottom really know what's going on. If there's a problem, they know the answer. But for that message to get to the people who can really make the decisions to make a difference, it's got to go through this middle area, the sort of management, where so often there's this sense of, if I pass this message up, I'm going to give up some of my power, and it makes me look bad, so I won't pass that message up. And when there's a message that wants to come down from the top, it gets stuck in that middle part again. That's there's much more to it than that, and I'm just highlighting one example. But people hold on to power for lots of reasons, but actually, I think for the leaders of the future, one of the great releases as well as a challenge is to let go of that power and pass it through and give it to people around them.
So I can imagine how, in the scenario you paint of a company of hundreds of people, and then we have middle levels and bottom levels, top levels. What about within many of our members here in the group might be running a small department of 5 people. They might be running a small club, a reading circle, even. I mean, in much more non-corporate fields, if we find ourselves in a position of power, what can we do as responsible leaders to diffuse that power, to disseminate it, to give, to empower other people, while at the same time retaining enough to have the confidence maybe to make decisions and to lead others without saying all the time, what do we all think? Or should we be asking all the time, what do we all think?
Well, there's different circumstances in terms of leadership. Sometimes, the house is on fire. This is not a time for the leader to say, well, let's all sit down and find a consensus about what we've got to do. So the leader then says, right, everybody out the door. One of the things you described when you responded to what I wrote yesterday was how defined you are if you find that there's bad behavior going on in a group that you're managing. So you are exercising power in that moment, and but it's responsible, and in your view, it's for the good of the culture of that group. So some people might say, well, you're being a tyrant. So you're always going to have to find these kind of balances. But the first thought that came to my mind when you were asking that question was, what can we do? Well, the first thing is to actually reflect that I have a position now where I hold power. So what am I going to do with it? How am I going to exercise it? What's my ethical stance? How important is integrity to me? So that when you ask somebody to do something, and of course in your situation, you're asking people all the time because you can't really tell them unless there's a real transgression of the rules. So I think that's a fundamental start point, and it comes back to what I say so often, which is leadership. The key skill of leadership is self-awareness. So you give me power, right? I'm now going to reflect on what does that mean, and how am I going to work with that, and how are people going to respond to me?
I think that's a very good point. And also to become aware maybe of layers of power. If you walk into a room with your leader's badge on, then obviously there's an outward manifestation of that power. However, you might see yourself as just another guy talking to one of your staff members or one of your team, and you might see yourself as being completely on the level without being aware that they might perceive it in quite a different way, which is why relationships, if we go back to schools, relationships that form between teachers and students who are of an age to have a sexual relationship are never good, because that teacher, however much they might feel they're on a level with the student, is actually abusing a power without even being aware of it.
Yes, that's why this sort of reflection process is so important, because you might be in a group and have some charisma, and people will automatically start looking to you. And I remember running a healing group years ago, and I had all these people around me, and I actually was enjoying this sense of power of people looking up to me. And then one of the friends of somebody who she'd recommended this person into the group, she came to me and she said, I think you need to look at how you're behaving, because it looks like you're enjoying this a bit too much. And so that was sort of really buttering up my ego, and I sort of, I'm the cool dude around here, but also then you talk about, because very often there's a sexual undertone, and again, this is what's going on here. I remember I did pro bono work in prisons some years ago. And after each visit, when we'd gone in and we'd done the work, which was all sorts of healing work that we were doing with prisoners, we all sat down and we had a really rigorous debriefing, because it was so easy to be manipulated by these people who'd been behind bars sometimes for 20, 30 years. And there we were. The atmosphere in there is something like I'd never come across before. So having a group where you can really reflect on this and say, how was I, and what buttered me up, what made me feel good, and actually, is that healthy? These are all great questions.
That's great. Well, they're questions that we will develop in these Friday interviews. We want to keep it fairly short. So we've opened the door there to power. I'm sure it's a subject that will come back time and again over the weeks and months to come. And the more that members of the group open up, as they have done already, and talk about their own situations, then the richer this experience will become. So thanks very much again for your time, Tom, and look forward to hooking up again next week.
Yes, enjoy your sunshine while we freeze in England.
I will. It's really, really, really blue sky this morning, but I won't rub it in. Okay, bye bye for now.
Bye, bye.